Big Shaq, known to the world as Shaquille O'Neal, settled into his cozy VIP seat with an easy grin. The flight was a red-eye, departing from JFK and heading west. Shaq had a packed schedule ahead, charity events and a crucial business meeting that could redefine his brand. He needed this rest, and first-class comfort was just the ticket. The cabin, softly lit, felt like a sanctuary amidst the controlled chaos of boarding. Polite greetings from the flight attendants and soothing overhead music added to the serene vibe. Shaq, accustomed to traveling in style, was especially thankful for these luxuries after a grueling week packed with appearances. Taking a moment, he observed the scene around him. Across the aisle, a man in a sharp navy suit scrolled through emails on his tablet. A few seats down, a woman in a pastel pink business suit typed furiously on her laptop. From behind, faint chatter about last night's sports game hummed in the background. As the final passengers boarded, a tall flight attendant with a practiced smile walked down the aisle, confirming the overhead bins were shut. Shaq smiled back, expecting a smooth flight ahead. But his tranquility was short-lived. Suddenly, a slim woman in an immaculate white blazer appeared at the front of the cabin. Her face wore an unmistakable mask of entitlement. Trailing behind her was another woman, arms loaded with a designer handbag and a luxurious wrap. They stopped at the cabin's entrance, scanning the seat numbers with furrowed brows. Quickly, the impeccably dressed woman's eyes landed on Shaq. He recognized that look, a familiar mix of entitlement and superiority. Choosing to ignore her, he flipped through the magazine on his lap. The woman approached. "Excuse me," she began, her tone teetering between forced politeness and condescension. "I think there's been a mistake. This is my seat." Shaq looked up calmly. "Ma'am, my boarding pass says seat 1A. I booked it last week." Her lips tightened into a thin line. "I'm a platinum member with this airline. I always sit in 1A. Now, if you just—" she gestured toward the overhead bin, "my bag should be here, and I'd like to settle in. Your cooperation would be appreciated." A hush fell over the cabin as curious passengers tuned into the escalating confrontation. Shaq stayed composed. "I'm sorry, but that's not how seat assignments work. Maybe double-check your boarding pass or speak to the attendant." Her face hardened with indignation as she summoned a flight attendant, a young man named Trevor, who approached with a nervous smile. "Is there a problem?" he asked. "Yes," the woman snapped. "I need you to fix this." "That's my seat." Trevor inspected their boarding passes. "Ma'am," he said gently, "you're assigned to seat 3C. It's still first class, just not here." "Impossible," she shot back. "I specifically requested 1A. Do something." Turning to Shaq with hesitation, Trevor asked, "Sir, would you mind switching seats with her? We'd greatly appreciate it. She's one of our valued flyers." Shaq smiled, his patience steady though his annoyance was clear. "I booked this seat for the extra legroom. No, I'm not switching." The woman let out a sharp laugh. "You're really not giving it up? Look at you. You'd be more comfortable in 3C. Shaq's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, I'm 7 feet 1 inch. I picked this seat for comfort. I'm not moving because you think you deserve it more." Trevor leaned in quietly. "Sir, she's a VIP with the airline. Maybe we can find you another seat, like 2A or 2B. They're almost the same." Shaq's calm voice now carried an unmistakable edge. "You want me to move because she's important? I paid for this seat, Trevor." The cabin's tension was palpable, with everyone holding their breath to see who would relent first. The woman, glaring, made a cutting remark. "I'm sure your plans are flexible. Some of us run companies, you know." Raising a brow, Shaq replied softly, "So do I." She opened her mouth, ready to retort, but the sharp chime of her phone interrupted. Rolling her eyes, she yanked it from her bag and answered curtly, "Yes, I'm boarding." "No, there's a seat problem. Completely incompetent. They're making this difficult." "Wait, who?" "You can handle it." Without a proper goodbye, she hung up and turned her attention back to Trevor. "My associate just contacted airline management. They'll hear about this, I promise," she declared, her tone dripping with self-importance. Trevor nodded stiffly, worry flashing across his face. "I'm sure we can resolve this. Let me call a supervisor." Moments later, Felicia, a middle-aged woman with the polished calm of an airline veteran, arrived. Her professional demeanor betrayed no hint of the tension brewing. "Good evening. What seems to be the issue?" she asked politely. The woman launched into a tirade, complaining about the staff's incompetence, the premium she had paid, and why the seat was, rightfully, hers. Shaq stood silent, arms crossed, letting her vent as Felicia carefully examined the boarding passes. Her expression tightened. "Ma'am, your pass clearly shows seat 3C. While it's still in first class, it's not seat 1A. We can check for upgrades, but this gentleman is entitled to his seat." The woman's voice rose. "This is outrageous. Do you know I could buy out half this plane if I wanted? Someone's losing their job over this. Mark my words." Sighing inwardly, Shaq watched Felicia attempt to calm her. "We currently have no other open seats in first class, and none of them offer the same legroom as 1A. I'm afraid there's nothing else we can do." Still refusing to back down, the woman muttered about making calls to her corporate contacts. Meanwhile, Shaq's phone buzzed in his hand. His expression shifted, steel-like resolve taking over as he quickly typed out a message and hit send. "I might need to make a call," he said to Felicia, his tone calm. She nodded uncertainly, while the woman sneered. "Go ahead. Call whoever you want. I have my people too." Shaq dialed. "Hey, Tony," he said quietly, "a bit of trouble on this flight. The airline is asking me to move because another passenger claims she outranks me. Can you look into it?" A pause. "No, we haven't taken off yet. Let me get you the flight details." He politely asked Felicia for the flight number and staff names. Though hesitant, she provided them, clearly unsettled by the rapid escalation. The call was brief. "Thanks, Tony. Let's get this sorted," Shaq said before hanging up. Turning to Felicia, he offered a calm assurance. "We'll hear from management soon." The woman scoffed. "You can threaten all you want. I know people at the top." Moments later, Felicia's handheld device pinged. She glanced at it, her face paling. After a quick word with Trevor, both stepped aside, leaving the woman looking smug. She assumed this meant trouble for Shaq. Returning with measured steps, Trevor cleared his throat. "Miss Redwood, we've received instructions from upper management. There's been a change to your travel arrangements." Her smirk widened. "Finally, you've come to your senses." Trevor shook his head, his voice trembling slightly. "Not quite. We're directed to ask you to deplane. Your ticket has been refunded, and your seat is no longer available on this flight." The polished facade cracked instantly. "Excuse me? You're kicking me off the plane." Felicia stepped forward, her tone apologetic but firm. "I'm sorry, Miss Redwood. This decision came directly from corporate due to harassment of another VIP passenger and multiple staff complaints about your behavior. We're obligated to comply or face job termination." The woman's cheeks flushed red as she stammered, "You can't do this. I'll have all of you fired." Felicia shrugged slightly. The directive includes a corporate review of staff handling. If we don't comply, we risk immediate dismissal. Trevor turned to Shaq, his voice respectful. Mr. O'Neal, we've been instructed to ensure your comfort. Please accept the airline's sincerest apologies. A stunned silence enveloped the cabin as Redwood's companion stared at her, unsure how to respond. Realizing her connections couldn't compete with Shaq's, she panicked, grabbing her belongings while muttering protests. As she exited, the tension dissolved, replaced by murmurs of disbelief. Felicia managed a polite nod toward Shaq, still visibly shaken. The plane's doors closed, finalizing Redwood's departure. Later, Shaq called Tony again. "Thanks for the assist. Redwood's threatening the crew now. She needs to be handled." The response reassured him. "Got it. Appreciate it." By the time the plane landed, word had spread. Redwood's corporate privileges had been revoked, her account suspended, and multiple employees from her team were under investigation for fraudulent upgrades. The airline staff, however, remained secure in their roles, thanks to Shaq's intervention. Stepping off the plane, Shaq glanced at his phone, reading Tony's final update. With a satisfied smile, he typed a quick reply, "Thanks for the assist," and stepped into the bustling terminal. Sometimes, it's about standing your ground. And when you do, the entire system just might adjust.